Welcome, everyone. This is Coffee with a Founder. We have lots of things that we explore on here. I'm Beck Bamberger, first off. We've done a handful of these episodes. I like where these are going. And with us today is a venture-backed founder with us who's raised lots and lots of money, actually, is doing very interesting things in the food space. Oliver Zahn. Did I get it right with the German pronunciation, Oliver?
Zahn. Yeah.
Zahn. Okay, great.
You got it pretty well.
He's the founder of Climax Foods, doing a lot of stuff with cheese and other alternative food spaces. Ex-Googler, ex-SpaceX, went to Harvard, did all the things. Very fancy, Oliver. Very, on the ball. Thank you for being here and spending some time with us.
It's my pleasure. Great to meet you, Beck.
Thank you. And so, what I want to always ask, and you've been 5 years into the game of founding your company now, Climax Foods. Why did you go and found a company that's venture backed? Because you were at Google, you were at SpaceX, you were at Impossible Foods. So I'm sure that leads us to something here, but tell us the why.
Yeah, I mean, basically it was the urgency of revolutionizing our food system that drew me into this space. And, the urgency also means I wanted to innovate fast. I wanted to discover fast. There was a lot of discovery we needed to do that I'm happy to talk about. And I wanted to scale products and ingredients that we then discovered fast. So the best, the most common way to do that today, if you've identified a need on planet Earth, and you've identified a solution, and you want to scale it quickly, is through venture capital. And so that's what we did. We raised pre-seed, then a seed, then an extension of the seed, then an A round, and here we are with products that are something really special, something new for our species and for the planet.
For the species and the planet. Okay, tell us a little bit about the food specifically. I know cheese is involved, which I love.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, my background is in astrophysics, computational theoretical and observational astrophysics in particular. And one of the things that I enjoyed about being in that field is that we had all these new data sets that we needed to understand and create new statistical techniques even to derive meaningful insights about the universe as a whole. Like we know so much more about the universe today than we did a few decades ago, before cosmology really got started, before we had data. Food is a unique opportunity, and it's the reason I left astrophysics was I wanted to maximize.
What a pivot!
I wanted to maximize the impact I can have on planet Earth, positive impact I can have to help create a more sustainable species. Right, humans right now are not very sustainable. It's arguably one of our biggest flaws. And so the question arose, well, how can I use my statistical AI? I just love data. I love deriving meaning from complex, messy, large data sets. How can I use that skill set to have positive impact along one or multiple verticals, like planetary health, human health, and there's many others that I frankly care about, but that are also worth starting companies in. But human health, planetary health were really high on my agenda, and food just stood out as the biggest opportunity in the space. At the same time, also tackling something that a lot of us sort of ignore, and I've ignored for a long time in my life, which is animal suffering. We sort of make this dramatic assumption that sentience and the ability to have consciousness, to feel, to empathize stops at humans, which biologically makes no sense. And by the way, if we ever trained AIs to be super intelligent, which we're close to, and aligned, they will probably tell us, hey guys, you got to figure something out, because if you want me to be aligned and not create human suffering, I have to tell you, as a super intelligent being, that you're killing 100 billion sentient beings every year. And you're doing it for food, and the vast majority of you guys don't need to do it because you have access to other sources of food that are equally or more nutritious. And so, I don't want to be sort of the preachy vegan here, but it's a really interesting time. I just attended a conference on AI and animals. And that's it's a really interesting time actually to, sort of deeply philosophically understand our role in this planet, and get our own act together when it comes to how to live ethically. And so, yeah, but anyway, for me, it was like impact maximization, right? I joined the effective altruism movement, which, have you heard of the effective altruism movement?
A little bit. Tell us more.
Yeah, it's basically, how can we in a quantifiable way, have positive impact in the world? And people do all kinds of things. Like some people do sort of earn to give, like they just make lots of money in some job, and then they give that money to good causes.
Yeah.
Some people directly dedicate their career to good causes, and there's lots of things that sort of catastrophic causes. There's less sort of global warming is more like slow death, and then there's quicker death like asteroids and nuclear wars. And so so there's sort of the idea, well, if you want to be all quantitative about how to maximize your positive impact in the world, how do you do it? So and for me, really, food stood out as something special. And fundamentally, I think the best way to say why is that it is the most outdated technology we use on Earth today, the way we derive a lot of our food. So we use 80% of all agricultural land on Earth, which, by the way, is 40% of all theoretically arable land on Earth. Mm-hmm. Arable means like you could theoretically turn to agriculture. So 80% of that we use to grow food for animals that produce less than 20% of our calories. Today, this is like the most staggering statistic that shows just how inefficient this is. 93% of all mammalian biomass on Earth is not wild animals, but farm animals. 94% of all birds is chicken, right? Like literally combining all. So like it just shows you like you need to put so much resources into it. Whenever we cut more into the Amazon rainforest, it's not to grow soybeans for humans, it's to grow soybeans for animals. So it's like literally, even more fundamentally, right, to be a little philosophical and, sort of, but also scientific about it. It's the fact that we all animals have evolved to not become food for other animals, right? This is like literally what we've spent the last 300 million years doing. So by trying to, instead of hunting, right, where there's a little bit of a balance, right? In hunting, like you have to chase an animal, you might break your leg, you might even be killed. It's a little bit of a natural balance, and the animal has a fair chance. If you systematically use animals for food, it becomes a technology. They're basically, in the way we treat them, they're basically factories for converting plant materials, right? They're mostly herbivores, into meat, dairy, and eggs.
But to wrap us on this one point, Oliver, you were in astrophysics, you were a physicist, and you said, hold up, I want to figure out the biggest impact I can have. Okay, therefore I'm going to do a food company for humans. And also I need to scale that rapidly, so I got to get it venture backed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. This is why we're here. Okay. So let me ask you this. Could you ever go back? Could you ever go back to working at one of these big companies? Are you so on the train of like, this is my life's work and bye-bye?
That's a good question. I mean, there's always great
founders. Like, could you go?
There's always great opportunities. There's definitely things that are nice about big companies. And there's things that are annoying. But I mean, look, like I don't want to say never. Like I've changed my mind. Like I think the beauty about life is that we can change our minds. We can learn. And so I've changed my mind so many times. So I would never say never. There's advantages and there's challenging things about being a founder for sure.
Indeed. So you're saying challenges. Do you want to elaborate? Because we want to get into it while we're here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a grind, right? You really need to, you own the whole thing. And that means, you need to become good at things that you're not trained in very quickly. Like there's no way, being in a startup, there's, you're not, like I was not an expert at 80% of the things that I did for a while.
Now you are.
But they were part of the puzzle, part of the game, of the challenge. And so I became very passionate about quickly learning things that I didn't know much about, right? Because it's like, this is my mission. This is my life. I want to solve this. I want to give humans delicious, nutritious, and affordable foods. And I think that's the other thing that I didn't mention earlier. It's like there's the cultural aspect to it. It's just so fascinating to continue the uniquely human trait of innovating in food. Like, 5,000 years ago when we domesticated animals and had the bizarre idea to take the milk from another mammal, which was also a genius idea, brilliant idea at the same time. Now 5,000 years later, it's time to innovate again, right? And come up with a simpler way to convert plants into meat and dairy and eggs. So yeah, like it's fascinating, but it also involved things like, like fundraising. I had no idea 5 years ago how to raise money for a startup. I had no idea. I'd seen a bunch of pitch decks from companies I advised, but like, yeah, it was all a novel process. There's so much you need to learn, like it can be challenging and it can be lonely, right? Especially as a solo founder.
Yeah.
It can be, there's sort of all these pros and cons of being a solo founder versus having a co-founder.
What do you think are the pros versus cons though? How would you delineate the pros versus cons? Because I think this is an ongoing battle that people think about.
Yeah. I mean, look, sometimes also you don't have a choice, right? It's not like everybody has a choice. So, then you just got to do it either way. So, pros and cons, who cares? But I mean, like the biggest con is you're super lonely a lot of the time. Like, you have things when things go well, everything's great. Everybody loves you. When things don't go so well, whatever, like, it might be very, very lonely. If you have a co-founder you get along with really well, that's less lonely. Also, how I said earlier, as a founder, you always, and in general in a startup, even, the leaders in my company, I always hire them to be versatile. That's like the biggest skill, like that they're passionate about solving problems and they're not going to say, oh, I didn't learn this, I'm not going to touch this. But as a founder, you just sort of have an extra level of responsibility. And so then if you have a co-founder, that sometimes you can say, hey, look, I don't really know how to deal with this, whatever performance, how to put together a performance management plan for people. Do you have experience from your previous company? Then they can maybe they have a little bit more experience, so they can own this. Otherwise, you just have to own it all yourself. So that's definitely the biggest advantage of having co-founders, I would say, less loneliness. The biggest disadvantage is sometimes, if things are not super smooth, you might get stuck in decision making, and that of course is also bad for a startup. So yeah. There's many other advantages.
Okay, but real quick, because I can hear all like the VC platform people chiming in here. It's like, oh, well, you raise money from VC funds, so of course they have all these founder communities and the founder network and Do you still feel though that that's not enough, or haven't you tapped into those resources, or what?
I guess interestingly, in the VCs that are on a cap table, there weren't that many that had that in the first couple of years. There's now like.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
There's now like two that have it. But in the first few years, that wasn't even available as a resource. I wasn't aware of it, at least. And then they would let me know. Yeah, I mean, so it's basically founders. I just happen to know that I, brainstormed with over some challenges. But, and also my advisors, some of my advisors, I have a great advisor who's a VC who helped me like with everything, this is what Carta is. This is how you set up an HR management platform. Like, I didn't know any of those things, and like, even like valuation, I didn't know, like, what does it mean exactly?
Yes.
What is a safe note? I had no idea.
What you're touching on, and I haven't heard this mentioned in this way or so, is, just in founder land, the learning curve is this, okay? Few people can survive this ascent. In other places, you work at corporate, you work at some chill thing, like, a little pace that walks up. But like, found is this, and some cannot stomach, and some burn out. I think that is part of it, is that people don't talk about that, like, oh, running out of money, oh, bad, no market fit or something. But also, like, no, you just couldn't learn fast enough. That's actually the problem.
Yeah, totally. And there's so many things. Yeah, there's so many things you need to learn. And people are just, people. We all are
disasters. Oh no.
No, I didn't move. I just turned the light on.
People I mean, people are difficult.
Yeah, people are difficult, right? Like, everybody goes through phases too. And then it's like, one of the challenges, I noticed that as a founder is like, if somebody goes through a phase where they're, sort of the squeaky wheel, how much bandwidth do you give? Much bandwidth do you give? Because I want to be there for people. I want to be, I want to be like the ultimate sort of force of, empowerment in the company. And that also includes helping people through tougher periods in their personal lives and whatever, or their professional lives. But you also, then you got to sort of, at some point, you got to say, like, look, like, you can only do it so much. You can't do it, at the expense. You can't be focused on one person at the expense of the whole company. So those are some of the things that, sometimes it just comes up because we're humans, right?
Yeah.
so,
And humans are hard.
and as a founder, you got to hold it all together.
Yes. Yes. I know. That's the hard part. Yeah. The humans might kill you. The humans might kill you. Okay. Oliver, more existential question, and then we can wrap up in a bit because we got stuff to do. What's your favorite emotion and why?
My favorite emotion and why?
Yes, I love this question.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah.
I think surprise, because it's the base, it's the basis for learning. Surprise, like of any kind. It can be a surprise that's sort of like, oh, this is much better than I thought. Oh, this is much worse, or more subtle, more nuanced. It's just like, whoa, my theory of Earth, of life, of the universe did not work out. I need to update it. I need to change it.
Yep.
All right, let's change it. Like, this is, for me, it's like, I think this is what defines a scientist. It's sort of, you treat your views of the world as a dance. Like, it's like you hold on to them, dearly, but once somebody convinces you that they're wrong, you're ready to move on. Like, that's the beauty. It's sort of like this sort of freedom from identification with your ideas, with your thoughts, and surprise is the biggest element in that process.
Ooh, I love an answer. I don't hear surprise often to this question, but I do love surprise, because it could be like surprise as in like delight, or surprises and you're horrified, but surprise can go all types of ways. So it's a very scientific answer. I like it. Okay. I like you're like ready to learn, Oliver. Okay. Now this is more unique, and then we can kind of wrap it up. But founders come from all types of backgrounds. Yes, some are very like, okay, well, you went to school for finance, you did your MBA, you got all the pedigree of this. You went as like an astrophysicist, and this is quite a shift. And this is back to the learning that you're mentioning. How has that background helped you with this? Other than, I'm a scientist, so I like to find surprises and I'm always learning, because that's the scientific method. I don't want to let you off with that easy answer.
Yeah, that's a great question as well. How has being an astrophysicist helped me? So I think most importantly, when I got into cosmology, which is the area in astrophysics that looks at the universe as a whole. So it looks at like time and space. How was time and space created? How did they evolve? How did the first galaxies form? How did the first galaxy clusters form, and so on? What is dark energy? What is dark matter? What was this process of inflation that happened very early on? Like, at the time, we had like hints that some of those things existed, but we had no frameworks for understanding them. So it was just this radical open-mindedness. You really needed to start from a blank slate. At the same time, there were more and more data sets coming into the picture. So you also knew, awesome, we will be able to answer some of these questions in a foreseeable period of time. We're not going to have to wait, a decade or 100 years to answer them.
Yeah.
So then just sort of being agnostic and data driven. I think it was something that, being in cosmology, when I got into it, whatever, 25-ish years ago, as an undergrad, was, it was super critical, and was ultimately, you were a successful scientist if you were very open-minded, scrappy, very startup-y actually in your attitude.
Yeah. There's parallels, and there are a lot of founders that come from a scientific background, and I appreciate the like non-emotional component to it, which is just like, okay, here's what the data says, here's what the experiment warranted, here's what it is. It is not, here it is. It's not an emotional feeling of let's discuss and debate it type of thing. So okay, we're tapping into something.
Yep. So yeah, I think that helped a lot. And just, then the other thing is also just the data sets were very confusing. Some of them were very large, some of them were small but messy. So sort of this like versatility to be able to just throw anything at it that could work. I think it helped in food tremendously, because when we got into food, people didn't even really understand, why does an animal product taste the way it does. So when we wanted to recreate animal products sort of satisfying texture, flavor, and nutrition, we just needed to be super open-minded. And in some cases, we tried things that didn't work at all, and in some cases, we tried things that worked better. In some cases, they worked really well. So this is obviously, if you want, I could talk more about the data science, the AI in the company, but that helped me as an astrophysicist just sort of not make any assumptions about how to solve the problem, but just try a bunch of things and see what works.
And see what works, see what comes out. I think that's a great way to end today's session, Oliver. See what works out. That's what we're doing. Don't run out of money until.
Thanks for running this podcast. It's super valuable.
We're having a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun. We'll see who listens to it and all this good stuff. But one last thing. Is there anything you want to promote, tout, celebrate about you? You got a speaking thing you said. You want to talk about that?
I got a what? So I couldn't hear.
You said you had you're doing a speaking session. You're leading.
Oh, we had. No, I was just. I was just in New Zealand talking to agriculture folks there, because even though a lot of their GDP is driven by animal ag, they're super open-minded because they're also hardcore sustainability oriented people overall. So that was really exciting. Just got back from there, and we have a lot of amazing things happening this year. We are scaling the production of our casein-like ingredient. We call it casein. Casein is the main protein in milk. It's over 80% of the protein in milk. It's what gives milk this beautiful sort of smooth mouthfeel, beautiful color, and melt and stretch, especially in cheeses like mozzarella, cheddar, and so on. Nice. So we're scaling the production of that. We have a lot of interest from across the globe in this ingredient. It's super clean label. A lot of the initial products that were in alternative protein, there was sort of a little bit of a consumer backlash in the last couple of years that maybe they're not actually healthier than animal products. Our products were really optimized to be super healthy, essentially superfoods, in addition to being very delicious. And so now we're working on making them as affordable as possible, so we can we can offer people these alternatives. And so far, the consumer feedback and feedback from big companies that want to work with us has been overwhelmingly positive. So hopefully we're going to roll these out into the world.
That's awesome. Oliver, thank you for being here today. This is Oliver. Say your last name,
Zahn.
Zahn, CEO, the former astrophysicist, by the way, but the CEO and founder of Climax Foods. Thank you so much for being here, Oliver.
Thank you, Beck. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.